Today, I'm going over this section in Chapter 7 of the text of A Course in Miracles called Healing and the Changelessness of Mind. The body is nothing more than a framework for developing abilities, which is quite apart from what they are used for. So, right off the bat, he's telling us that the body is nothing. It's just a tool within this dream for waking up. It's for developing the abilities to perceive correctly. But he's saying it's quite apart from what they are used for. Because we're not using our bodies correctly. We're using them to reinforce separation, to reinforce the ego's framework. We're supposed to be using them to reinforce spirit's framework. So he's saying that is a decision. And he puts that in italics, trying to point out to us that we are making the decision of which teacher to choose, ego or spirit. The effects of the ego's decision in this matter are so apparent that they need no elaboration. But the Holy Spirit's decision to use the body only for communication has such a direct connection with healing that it does need clarification. We don't need to keep elaborating on how the ego uses the body. We're well aware. We're doing it all the time. But since a part of us is afraid of healing, and because Holy Spirit's use for the body, which is a healing use for communication, is so direct that it needs clarification because we're not used to that. We've been resisting that this whole time. So we do need a lot of clarification on what it means to identify with spirit, but we don't need to keep elaborating on what it means to identify with ego because we don't need to keep reinforcing it. We want to know enough about it to be able to identify it, to observe it, to catch ourselves when we're doing it so that we can forgive ourselves and everyone else involved in a situation where we're judging or forgetting who we really are. But when it comes to understanding Holy Spirit's perspective, we need a lot of clarification so that we can keep reminding ourselves of our truth. The unhealed healer obviously does not understand his own vocation, right? We don't understand what our job is right now. We're so lost in the ego framework that we're just trying to survive each day, thinking that we live in this place of victimization and vulnerability. But that's not our truth. So the more we give our mind over to Holy Spirit, the more we can relax and release fear so that we begin to let Spirit clarify for us what our truth is and what it means to identify with Spirit and to give our mind over to Holy Spirit or to Jesus, whichever teacher you like. They're all figments of our imagination. They're just characters that we made up. Really, it's our higher self, the right part of our mind that's there to help us to go home, to our truth, to our peace. And our vocation, our job as a miracle worker, is to know this information, to identify with Spirit, to see ourselves and everyone else as Spirit so we can help our one mind to awaken. That's our job. That is our vocation. Only minds communicate, right? Not bodies, because bodies aren't even here, all right? It's only minds. So even though I appear to be a person who's moving her mouth and saying words, and you appear to be a person that has ears and is receiving those words, it's just a dream that we're having, talking to our one self in our mind. Really, it's about what's happening in our mind. So when my dream character appears to be talking to your dream character, and I appear to say something that awakens something within you, within your mind, that's just our one mind talking to each other with our right mind so that we can perceive correctly and awaken. That's our vocation. That's our job. That's what we are all here to do for each other. Now, we have mistakenly used these bodies to shut each other down, to feel separate from one another, to reinforce ego's thought system so that we all believe that we're victims of this world. But our job is to flip it and do the opposite. And the way we do that is by following Spirit's voice, which is within us. Since the ego cannot obliterate the impulse to communicate because it is also the impulse to create It can only teach you that the body can both communicate and create, and therefore does not need the mind. The ego thus tries to teach you that the body can act like the mind and is therefore self sufficient. Yet we have learned that behavior is not the level for either teaching or learning, since you can act in accordance with what you do not believe. All right, so that last sentence, he's pointing out something very important that I'm always trying to reinforce. What we do in the world with our behavior each day, the words we say, how we appear to act towards others, means nothing. Okay? This course is not telling you to go out into the world and be kind and loving to everyone, to everybody. No, 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 no. It has nothing to do with that. Now, it's not telling you to go out and be mean and unkind to everybody. It's not saying that either. It's saying that your behavior out in the world means nothing, because it's saying that people can behave one way, but in their mind be perceiving a completely different way. So, for example, we all know people in this world who like to appear to be really good, really kind. Some of them think they're earning points in heaven or God's love or something like that, for the afterlife. But inside, they're judging and condemning and coming from a place of fear, right? So that's just an example. So when someone is doing that and appears to be all sweet and kind and loving with their behavior and their words, but inside is really judging and full of ego perspective, which is reinforcing that they and everyone else is ego, their so-called kind behavior doesn't even matter. It doesn't mean anything because it's not really kind. Because if you're not really coming from a loving place within your mind and seeing everyone else as the pure, innocent child of God with no condemning, no judging, no fear, then it's not really kind. So that's why he's saying, don't focus on behavior. Your behavior means nothing. Focus on your mind and what you are perceiving. Are you perceiving people and yourselves as ego? Or are you believing that yourselves and everyone else are spirit? To do this, however, will weaken you as a teacher and a learner because, as has been repeatedly emphasized, you teach what you do believe. Okay, more words to say what I just said. If you're believing in your mind that other people and yourself are egos, but you're acting as if you believe something different with your behavior out in the world, he's saying it's actually weakening you as a teacher. It's not even good for you and anyone else for you to do that. You're not helping anything by doing that. Pretending to be kind and loving, pretending that you're being a good person is not helping anyone. So again, it has nothing to do with your behavior and everything to do with your perception. So that's why he's saying you teach what you do believe, and he put the word do in italics. An inconsistent lesson will be poorly taught and poorly learned. If you teach both sickness and healing, you are both a poor teacher and a poor learner. Again, he's telling us if you're going out and trying to act a certain way in the world, but then believing something different inside, you're being a bad teacher and a bad learner. Those are two conflicting ideas. So don't worry about how you're acting in the world or what your behavior is. Focus on changing your mind. And when you do identify with spirit on a regular basis, and you don't worry about your behavior, the next thing you know, you are acting in a kind and loving way because spirit has inspired you to do what is best for yourself and everyone else in any given situation. And that kind behavior that's coming from identifying with spirit doesn't always appear to be kind to all sorts of egos out in the world. For example, if someone appears in your dream to be harming you in some sort of way, or affecting you in a way that feels not peaceful, Holy Spirit may guide you to put up a boundary with that particular body. It is completely possible to forgive someone in your mind, to know that they are the innocent child of God, that their behavior that seems to be unkind and unloving is just coming from their own personal call for love because they are hurt and wounded. But that doesn't mean that your body needs to go save that body because it's calling for love. No, it's in our mind. So you want to see that person as the innocent child of God. That is how you're changing your mind, and you're doing your job as a miracle worker to communicate unconsciously to that other person's mind that they are also the innocent child of God. But at the same time, in the dream, from body to body, you can put up a boundary with that person because that is what is loving towards yourself. You don't want to put yourself in situations where you feel drained or your peace is being taken away or you appear to be treated unkindly by certain people. To continuously put yourself in those situations is not loving to yourself, okay? There's no particular formula on how to deal with people or situations in the world. That's why we don't ever want to rely on ourselves, our ego, or any kind of instruction manual on how to behave in the world. It's not even here. The world is just a classroom. What is it a classroom for? Awakening. How do we awaken? By perceiving our dream with Holy Spirit. And always let Spirit guide us on what to do, what to say, where to go, and how to be truly helpful. So if our mind is split and we are identifying with both spirit and ego at the same time, then we are teaching sickness and healing. And that is what would make us a poor teacher and a poor learner. So we don't want to be identifying with both. We want to choose one, and the only one that is the right one is spirit. Healing is the one ability everyone can develop and must develop if he is to be healed. So again, focusing on spirit. Healing is the Holy Spirit's form of communication in this world, and the only one he accepts. He recognizes no other because he does not accept the ego's confusion of mind and body. Minds can communicate, but they cannot hurt. Why? Why can minds not hurt, even if they're identifying with ego and teaching yourself and everyone else that they are ego? Why is that so? Because it's not real. The ego, these bodies, any thoughts of separation, they're not real. It's just a dream. So they can't really hurt us. We can just dream that they are hurting us. The body in the service of the ego can hurt other bodies, but this cannot occur unless the body has already been confused with the mind. This situation too can be used either for healing or for magic, but you must remember that magic always involves the belief that healing is harmful. This belief is its totally insane premise, and so it proceeds accordingly. So he's explaining about how confused the ego is, that bodies can appear to hurt other bodies, but he's constantly reminding us that it's just a dream, it's not real, and nothing could ever affect our reality, which is spirit and which is love. So he's reminding us that the ego's premise is completely insane, and so it proceeds accordingly, meaning it continues to do insane things. Healing only strengthens. Magic always tries to weaken. That's another way of saying spirit only strengthens and ego always tries to weaken. Healing perceives nothing in the healer that everyone else does not share with him, right? We are all healers because we are all one and we are all spirit. And we are meant to share that with one another through our perception, the way that we are seeing everyone and everything in our mind. Magic always sees something special in the healer, which he believes he can offer as a gift to someone who does not have it. Magic, meaning the ego, always sees something special in the healer, meaning the ego could take someone that they see as special and as a healer and as different from them and put them up on a pedestal because he believes that that healer has a gift that he himself does not have. Or she, again, remember, don't pay attention to all these male pronouns all the time. It means everyone. He may believe that the gift comes from God to him, but it is quite evident that he does not understand God if he thinks he has something that others lack. right? So someone might think that if someone's this, great healer, that they have a special gift from God that others don't have. But he's saying that if a healer ever did believe that, then that healer doesn't actually understand God, because the healing powers that that healer has, everyone actually has, because we're all the same. So if we're going to see differences in people and put certain people up on pedestals and saying that they're better somehow, we're not understanding God and we're not understanding ourselves. The Holy Spirit does not work by chance, and healing that is of Him always works, right? Spirit's healing always works. Unless the healer always heals by Him, the results will vary, right? If we're trying to heal without God, without Spirit, the results will vary. Maybe sometimes we'll have success, maybe sometimes we won't. Like in our world, medicine, for example, is considered magic. It's of the ego. It doesn't mean don't take medicine. That's not what Jesus or the Course is saying. It's not saying that at all. As long as we believe that we're here and we believe that we're bodies, we can go ahead and take things like medicine to help us feel better. But it's still just a trick. It's still just an illusion, but it's also okay. What he's suggesting that we not do is put things like medicine or doctors or any kind of healers, even naturalistic healers, whatever, up on a pedestal saying they're different and they have some sort of gift that we don't have. None of that is true, and it defeats the purpose of perceiving correctly in our mind that we are all healers when we align with Spirit. That is actually what heals us. Yet healing itself is consistent, since only consistency is conflict free, and only the conflict free are whole. All fancy words to say that Spirit is consistent, and as long as we identify with Spirit, we will feel whole. By accepting exceptions and acknowledging that He can sometimes heal and sometimes not, the healer is obviously accepting inconsistency. Right? When we accept ego's thought system, we are accepting inconsistency, because the ego is inconsistent. He is therefore in conflict and is teaching conflict. When we identify with ego, we are in conflict and we're teaching conflict, because we're seeing others as ego. Can anything of God not be for all and for always? No, that's not possible. Everything of God is for all and is for always. Love is incapable of any exceptions. Only if there is fear does the idea of exception seem to be meaningful, right? And that's what the entire ego thought system is based upon, fear. So as soon as we're in fear and we're identifying with ego, we are making exceptions to our wholeness. Exceptions are fearful because they are made by fear. The fearful healer is a contradiction in terms, and is therefore a concept that only a conflicted mind could possibly perceive as meaningful. So he's saying there's no such thing as a fearful healer, right? I don't care what's happening in this world. I don't care who claims to be a healer or not, who appears to be a healer or not. It doesn't matter. It's all an illusion. When he's talking about a healer here, he's talking about Spirit and those who are in alignment with Spirit. And that is what real healing and real healers are. Fear does not gladden. Healing does. That's another way of saying ego does not gladden and Spirit does, because ego equals fear and healing equals Spirit. Fear always makes exceptions. Healing never does, right? Ego's always making exceptions. Some are good, some are bad. These belong, these don't, so on and so forth. And Spirit never does, because from Spirit's perception, everyone and everything is the same. Fear produces dissociation because it induces separation. Healing always produces harmony because it proceeds from integration. So fear, meaning ego, produces dissociation because it induces separation, right? That's what it's all about, ego. Fear, separation, lack. And healing, which means Spirit, always produces harmony because it proceeds from integration, knowing that we're all integrated, we're all one, we are all the same. And this is what heals us. It is predictable because it can be counted on. Spirit. Everything that is of God can be counted on because everything of God is wholly real. Healing can be counted on because it is inspired by His voice, meaning Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit is the voice for God and is in accord with His laws, meaning God's laws. Yet, if healing is consistent, it cannot be inconsistently understood. Spirit is consistent, but if we are confused and we don't know if we're spirit or ego, then we are inconsistent, or our understanding of who and what we really are is inconsistent. Understanding means consistency because God means consistency. Since that is His meaning, it is also yours. So we are really one with God, and we are really consistent just like God. But not ego, right? Ego's not consistent. Ego does this. Ego's all about duality, opposites. That's not the same as spirit. That's the exact opposite. Your meaning cannot be out of accord with His because your whole meaning and your only meaning comes from His and is like His. We are the same as God. In reality, we are consistent just like God. God cannot be out of accord with Himself, right? He can't be out of accord with us because we are Him. And you cannot be out of accord with Him, right? Because we are Him. You cannot separate yourself from your Creator, right? No matter how hard we try, we cannot do it. Who created you by sharing His being with you, right? Beautiful words to explain how God created us out of His extension of love. We can never be separate from God, and we can never be separate from the love that we really are. The unhealed healer wants gratitude from his brothers, but he is not grateful to them. Right? So the way to translate that sentence into ego speak is when an ego wants to receive gratitude from others, but they are not giving it back because they are not seeing others as the pure, innocent child of God that they really are. That's an ego example of what that means. That is because he thinks he is giving something to them and is not receiving something equally desirable in return. His teaching is limited because he is learning so little. His healing lesson is limited by his own ingratitude, which is a lesson in sickness. True learning is constant and so vital in its power for change that a son of God can recognize his power in one instant and change the world in the next. That is how powerful forgiveness is. Literally changing your mind about the world is the most powerful thing that you can do for healing yourself and healing others. Perceive with spirit. That's the most powerful thing you can do. That is because by changing his mind, he has changed the most powerful device that was ever given him for change, our mind. This in no way contradicts the changelessness of mind as God created it, but you think you have changed it as long as you learn through the ego, right? The ego has us convinced that we have changed heaven, that we have changed God, that we have changed ourselves to be more independent, right? We want to be the boss. We want to be God when we are identified with ego. So that's why we think we have changed the way that things are. But he's telling us no, we can change nothing. We can only dream that we are changing things. This places you in a position of needing to learn a lesson that seems contradictory. You must learn to change your mind about your mind. Only by this can you learn that it is changeless. And he puts is in italics. Okay, so that's the trick of this whole thing. We're literally trying to change our mind about our mind. It has nothing to do with the world and nothing to do with our bodies. When you heal, that is exactly what you are learning. You are recognizing the changeless mind in your brother by realizing that he could not have changed his mind, right? So we know that when we are perceiving with ego, we are sick, right? Our mind is sick. So the way to heal ourselves and others is to perceive correctly that we are spirit and that everyone else is spirit. This is how we change the world, right? Which can't really happen because there is no world. But most importantly, this is how we change our mind about our mind. So when we know another ego does not have the ability to change their mind, at least in that moment, in that given moment, right? Because they're fully identified with ego, the way that we help that brother is by perceiving them correctly in our mind. We don't need to say a word. That is how you perceive the Holy Spirit in him, right? That's what we want to do. We want to perceive the Holy Spirit in everybody. It is only the Holy Spirit in him that never changes his mind, right? That's the consistent part of everybody, the real true self of everybody, that consistent spirit. He himself may think he can, or he would not perceive himself as sick, right? Others may think that they can separate themselves from spirit and be lost in ego. And that's why people feel sick or perceive themselves and others as sick and separated and in fear. He therefore does not know what his self is. And he puts self with a capital S because the true self is the spirit self. And when we are sick in ego perception, we are not knowing our true self. If you see only the changeless in him, you have not really changed him. By changing your mind about his for him, you help him undo the change his ego thinks it has made in him. More twisty turny words to mean perceive your brother correctly in your mind as spirit, and this is how you are healing everyone. If you see your brother as, oh, that person thinks they're ego, they're separated, they're in fear, you are then reinforcing that sickness. And then you're not healing yourself or anyone else by doing that. So we want to overlook the ego. We want to overlook the illusory world of chaos, the shit show, right? We want to overlook it and see spirit everywhere, the love and light everywhere. Just picture white light. Just let all the separate images within the illusion fade away and see beautiful white light instead. That is the truth of who and what we really are. As you can hear two voices, right? The voice of ego and the voice of spirit, because we all have a split mind as long as we think we're here. You can see in two ways, right? We can see through the perception of ego or the perception of spirit. One way shows you an image or an idol that you may worship out of fear but will never love, right? That's the ego's perception. The other shows you only truth, which you will love because you will understand it. That's spirit's perception. Understanding is appreciation because what you understand, you can identify with. And by making it part of you, you have accepted it with love. That is how God Himself created you, right? In love, in understanding, in appreciation, and in love. The ego is totally unable to understand this because it does not understand what it makes, does not appreciate it, and does not love it. Right? The exact opposite of God. The exact opposite. It incorporates to take away, right? That's what the ego does. It gives to take away. It literally believes that every time it deprives someone of something, it has increased, right? Egos believe that if they can take away from someone else and get it for themselves, that they have increased. That's not true. I have spoken often of the increase of the kingdom by your creations, which can only be created as you were. The whole glory and perfect joy that is the kingdom lies in you to give. Do you not want to give it? So he's reminding us who we really are and how good it feels to give love, to give true perception to ourselves and everyone else, because it is our nature. It is who we really are. And once we start practicing doing that, it feels really good. But it does take willingness and determination, because we are mostly identified with our ego, and our ego does not want this. It resists it at all costs. It does not want healing. It does not want love. It does not want sharing. It might want the behavior of that, right? It might want to act like it wants healing and that it wants love and it wants sharing, right? It might say those words. An ego might go around trying to act like that. But inside, if they are perceiving others as separate from them or better than them or less than them, or any of the other crazy duality things that egos think, then you are not an actual healer, and you are not really giving love, and you are not really sharing. So that's what he's explaining to us. So the more we identify with true love, which is coming from spirit, the more relaxed we will feel, the more we will receive the healing and the light, and the more we will begin to identify with our true self. So that's why he's saying, do you not want to give it? Yes, we really do. Our ego doesn't want to give it. No, it does not. But our spirit self does. You cannot forget the Father because I am with you, and I cannot forget him. Okay, Jesus did not forget the Father. That's how he awakened when he was here over 2,000 years ago. He is with us because we are one with him, meaning Jesus, who is our older brother, who's here to guide the way, to show us how to awaken just like him. And we are also one with our Father, our Creator. To forget me is to forget yourself and him who created you. So we don't want to forget Jesus. We don't want to forget Holy Spirit. And we don't want to forget our Father who created us. Our brothers are forgetful. Our brothers, when they are identified with ego, yes, they are forgetful. And so are we when we are identified with ego. We are also forgetting that. That is why they need your remembrance of me and of him who created me. So he's saying that's why he needs us as a miracle worker to remember our truth, so that we can return our brothers' minds and our own mind back to our home, our kingdom, heaven, which is not a place, it's a state of oneness. Through this remembrance, you can change their minds about themselves as I can change yours. Your mind is so powerful a light that you can look into theirs and enlighten them as I can enlighten yours. I want to share my mind with you because we are of one mind, and that mind is ours. See only this mind everywhere, because only this is everywhere and in everything. Only this, right? Only spirit, only love is everywhere and in everything. So that's why he's telling us to overlook the world of separation and only focus on that, the truth. It is everything because it encompasses all things within itself. Blessed are you who perceive only this, because you perceive only what is true. Beautiful, fancy words to talk about forgiveness. Come therefore unto me and learn of the truth in you. The mind we share is shared by all our brothers, and as we see them truly, they will be healed, because practicing forgiveness heals. That's how we do it. And remember, practicing forgiveness means overlooking the world of illusion, overlooking separation, and instead perceiving the oneness, the wholeness, the spirit that we all are. We are all the innocent child of God. You know, you can remind yourself from time to time, hey, there's nobody out there. Nothing and no one is out there. So anything that I am perceiving that is disturbing my peace is only a projection coming from my mind onto the movie screen of my illusory dream life, my classroom, to show me what needs to be healed within me. And how do we heal it? By forgiving it, by giving it over to spirit, by knowing that it's not true and it's an illusion, by knowing what is true, which is eternal love, which is spirit. Let your mind shine with mine upon their minds, and by our gratitude to make them aware of the light in them. This light will shine back upon you and on the whole sonship. The sonship means all of us, because this is your proper gift to God. He will accept it and give it to the sonship because it is acceptable to him and therefore to his sons. This is true communion with Holy Spirit, who sees the altar of God in everyone. And by bringing it to your appreciation, he calls upon you to love God and his creation. You can appreciate the sonship only as one. This is part of the law of creation and therefore governs all thought. All beautiful words, once again, to talk about practicing forgiveness, accepting God's love, sharing God's love, perceiving God's love, being appreciative and having gratitude for God's love. All of those things mean the same thing. It's all about perceiving with spirit, identifying with spirit. That's why he's saying it's true communion, where you are allowing yourself to commune with spirit, which is your true self. And as we do that, we are doing our job as miracle workers to share this perception, our truth, with everyone, everywhere in our mind. And remember, anytime you forget to do it and you make the mistake of identifying with ego, it's okay. It's just an exercise. This is just a classroom. We're just learning. The good news is you always have another moment to choose again.